you wanna do? Yo, what's good, family? It's the Uncle Scruffy Podcast, brought to you by Get Off Your Chest Media. What you wanna do? Where we talk life, politics, and all the wildness in between. I'm your host, What You Uncle Scruffy, the single dad from Dutchess County with a mouth and not a lot of patience for nonsense. You want today, we're diving into a hot one. What you want to do? Why are folks heated about Trump bringing white South Africans as refugees? Oh yeah, this one's got layers. You want to do, y'all. Let's peel it back.
So, starting yesterday, the U.S. is receiving its first batch of white South African nationals that have been extended the privilege of coming to the United States as refugees from South Africa. This first batch is 8,000 of these people. So the American people don't want this. It's crazy because when Donald Trump took office, he discontinued almost entirely the refugee program, and there were like 22,000 people from different countries seeking refugee status and in the process of receiving denial or approval for the refugee status to reside in the United States due to issues in their country, which are always based and caused by, no matter what they are, the destabilization that the United States and the West has caused at some point, some way. Donald Trump discontinued this program almost entirely and threw all of these 20-something thousand people back to their countries. You come to the United States as a refugee because you're fleeing political persecution or ethnic persecution, political blah, blah, blah. Forms of persecution. These Afrikaners are not being racially discriminated against, but I will tell you something, and I hope this is not taken the wrong way. I worked in South Africa in 2017 and 2018 for their National Assembly, and I was able to meet some of these characters because they have a party in the parliament there called the Vryheid something first party. It's a minority party, and their party fundamentals are based on the party is based on two fundamentals, okay? These are very racist people, the most racist shit I have ever heard in my life come out of these people's mouths. And the fundamentals of their party, their politics, is the staunch opposition to affirmative action and the staunch opposition to Black economic empowerment. These people are descendants of the colonialists from the Netherlands. They came into South Africa in 1948 and before that, really, and stole all of the land. So they make up like 13% of the population in South Africa, and they own like 95% of the land. Like literally one person will have 20 or 25,000 acres that they and their lineage stole. And they are colonialist minded to this day. They are slave mentality, like slave owning mentality. They are, they exist in South Africa, and Black people are not allowed where they live unless they have a permit for work, like a housemaid or something. And they're the cause for South Africa being one of the most unequal countries in the world, according to the World Bank, to this day. And while apartheid ended in 1990, you wouldn't know it going to South Africa by the way that the Black people, the Black South Africans, are treated versus these jackasses. And that is what they are. They are fucking ignorant, evil people. I mean, they call themselves Boers and shit like that. I'm telling you, the stuff that they say, and it's like every single one of them that I met that are almost 200 of them in this party. I didn't work for this party. This party is just in the assembly. All are like that. Like they are like in their regular conversation are like, Black people don't have no intelligence. And this is the shit they say all the time, right? And it's why there's racial divide in South Africa like it is, because this minority still has a grip. So Donald Trump, at the behest of Elon Musk and Peter Thiel with their insistence that these particular group of white people are facing racial discrimination because the National Assembly, the government of South Africa, has enacted a land back policy, which is technically expropriation without compensation, which you stole the land. You don't need to be compensated to have one person, and they will tell you, we worked hard for this land. You didn't work this is what they believe. And it's 20,000 acres, and one person will tell you that his grandfather worked hard for the land. His grandfather came from Israel and the Netherlands and stole the land by murdering the people that had it for generations. And these people that are coming to the United States, I do not like them, and nobody else is going to like them. They're not coming here because they are under oppression. They are coming here with a sense of entitlement and their wealth, and for a reason. But as they're being provided refugee status only as the exception to the rule, everyone else, no one gets this status ever again because the program is being discontinued. For 12 months at least, they have housing completely paid for. They have all of their food, all of their clothing, all of their amenities, cell phones, and travel vouchers. In some cases, even they will be provided vehicles. Guess who pays for all of that when it comes down to the bottom sifting? The U.S. taxpayer funds are who get those funds are derived from U.S. taxpayer funds. When everybody was yapping about the people that, like Florida and Texas, was flying to New York, the migrants last year and the year before that, and they were saying they're getting vouchers and they're getting free food and subsidies, and they weren't. Well, these 8,000 plus are going to get all of that for at least a year, and then after a year they'll be able to change their status to permanent legal resident. And now half of the Afrikaners have an issue with coming to the United States as a refugee, but the ones that understand the agenda are the ones that are coming. And
Trump just deported thousands of people, but guess who got flown in? While Trump is rounding up brown people that have been here for decades, raised families, paid taxes, he just flew in a group of 59 white South Africans. Refugees, he says. Let's be real, these aren't your typical refugees. They're Afrikaners, white South Africans that claim they're being targeted for land reforms that are meant to undo apartheid-era inequality. Trump called it a white genocide, but South African officials are calling that a racist conspiracy theory. Does anybody really believe they're being targeted? I don't think so. The data doesn't support widespread attacks. Meanwhile, Trump is performing the largest mass deportation effort in American history, tearing apart immigrant families, raiding neighborhoods, deporting people that are actually fleeing from war and violence. So let's not pretend this is about illegal versus legal immigration. This is about race, power, and who gets to have the American dream. And that's the truth.
Hey, lovely people, and particularly a quick word to my American friends who might be tempted to believe what Donald Trump is saying about South Africa, my home country, where I happen to be right now. Him and Elon Musk are racist twats who have no fucking idea what they're talking about. Because what they're doing is taking the word of a fringe racist group called AfriForum and other disaffected whites, disgruntled by the end of apartheid, feeling hard done by, and much like the Israelis, victimizing themselves when they are not victims at all, bitching about how land redistribution is racist against whites. These are such ignorant provocateurs, and it's going to backfire on them. South Africans' majority, the black majority, and it's a multiracial, multi-tribal society now, only own a tiny proportion of the land versus the size of their population. And while white South Africans make up 7% of the population, more or less, they own about 70% of the decent land. And so the redistribution of land is to address past inequities, and the vast majority of South Africans agree and understand why that's happening and that it's a good thing. It's also under a very strict mechanism. Now, not everyone agrees, of course, with the mechanism, but the principle is what racists like Musk and Trump are railing against here on behalf of a bunch of assholes who equate equality with oppression, because for so many years, decades and decades of the apartheid era, they were the oppressor. And as we know, whenever the oppressor looks at something like equality, it suddenly becomes oppression of him. So fuck Elon Musk, fuck these idiots from AfriForum. You probably know nothing about them, but this is a bunch of, the equivalent of your kind of Proud Boys hanging on to some past that never actually existed. And a past in which the vast majority of people in this country were oppressed, suppressed, and treated much like, fortunately not quite as badly as the Israelis treat the Palestinians. So this whole railing against South Africa, I'm going to add one more point. South Africans on the whole, all of us, white, black, Indian, colored, which is not a term, is a specific term for those of you who might get offended by that, a specific racial group. We are very, very resilient people. As a country, we have gone through a great deal, both in terms of the early part and then the transition from the apartheid era to genuine multicultural democracy.
So here's what went down. Trump's back in office and doing what he does best, stirring the pot.
Things like a genocide. There's no genocide in South Africa. Things like mass expropriation without compensation. It's not a single farm that's been expropriated without compensation in South Africa. Yes, we have some issues with crime and criminality, but these affect all of our citizens in the same way.
Do you believe the US president is deliberately lying about South Africa?
We don't know where he gets his information from and who informs him. What we just see as farmers in South Africa is we don't see a confiscation of land. We don't see large-scale land grabs in South Africa. What we see is at this stage still very reasonable, as is any country in the world.
People are talking about moving to the US. What's thinking about
moving
that?
What?
To the USA. People are saying that, well, there's genocide in South Africa. How do you feel about that? You look very happy here.
Yeah, I'm very happy here. What do you mean? Daar's genocide. Seker op 'n klein skaal, bro, maar ja. Yeah, have a good day.
Further your false narrative, because we're not saying we don't have an issue with violent crime in South Africa. We are saying it is not a genocide against white people.
Right, good morning, guys. I just want to get something off my chest.
Hurry up and get the shit off your fucking chest!
You saw this 49 Afrikaners that arrived in the USA as refugees. To me, what you're doing, it's like you are cowards. You are running away from your heritage, from your home country. Let me tell you one thing, me, I'm not going anywhere. I'm staying here.
I'm a refugee just from around here, from around here.
To all of the South African Afrikaans refugees that are coming to America soon, I just want to let you know, as someone whose wife is Afrikaans, who's been to South Africa multiple times, you're gonna have a bad time. There's no white genocide happening in South Africa. You have crime that's happening as a result of racism-fueled generational economic inequality, the same thing that's happening in America. We're just a couple decades ahead of you on the unchecked capitalism timeline. But I have good news for you. You don't have to worry about the cheap exploited labor rising up against you anymore, because now that you're in America, you'll get to be the cheap exploited labor. If you were middle class or upper middle class in South Africa and you come to America, you're poor now. Like, really poor. You're not gonna have maids and gardeners and personal servants that you can pay $15 a day for. Now you get to be the cheap labor. But by all means, please come to America and experience the American capitalism that Elon Musk's been raving about to you. You'll probably love it. You know, what do I know? There's probably very little chance that you'll end up going back to South Africa in a year or two after realizing how overpriced and fucked up America is. I wouldn't even worry about that as a possibility. And if you think I'm being mean to these people because I think they're a bunch of racist, bigoted colonizers who wish they could go back to apartheid South Africa, it's just because I do think that.
anyone who has any problems with refugees, I do not want to hear you talk about the South African white refugees and be like, they're coming here legally, it's fine, because their own government even says that they are not vetted. While Donald Trump says that they are completely vetted, that's 100% untrue according to the South African government. They also said that the people that claim that they are being genocided are actually pro-apartheid, and that's why they're moving to the United States. And they're saying straight up that it is a move for political advantage. The South African government also came out and said that it's really ironic that Trump is allowing the most economically privileged people from around the world to enter the United States while denying the most vulnerable people who are trying to immigrate to the United States. Like, let's be clear here. These people are becoming refugees to the United States specifically because they are upset that people are upset in South Africa that they are pro-apartheid. And yet Donald Trump will not accept any refugees that are actually coming here for detrimental circumstances. Again, it's just racism. That's all it is.
Mostly Afrikaners. Now, why them? According to Trump, what you want to do? It's because they're being persecuted under South Africa's new land reform laws. What you want to do? He says they're facing racial discrimination and violence, especially white farmers. But hold up, what you want to do? Here's why folks are pissed off. 1. Selective sympathy. Trump shut the door on refugees from war zones. What you want to? Climate disasters and political crackdowns, many of whom are people of color. What you want to do? But he opened that same door wide for white South Africans. What you want to do? That's giving real pick and choose energy, like refugee roulette. What you want to do? A lot of folks are calling it what it looks like, racially biased policy. 2, what you want to do? The facts ain't adding up. Trump's talking about a white genocide, but experts and South African officials, what you want to do? They're not seeing it. Yes, South Africa's got a crime problem, no lie, but that crime hits everybody. What you want to do, not just white folks. So now you've got a policy based on claims that don't hold much weight. That's dangerous territory. 3, you want to do. It's getting messy with South African President Cyril Ramaphosa ain't happy. He clapped back. What you want to do? Saying Afrikaners fit the refugee definition. They're not persecuted.
Own concern because those people who are being enticed to go to the United States do not fit the definition of a refugee. A refugee is someone who has to leave their country out of fear of political persecution, religious persecution, or economic persecution. And
that's what the United States says they're undergoing in South Africa. That's why they've opened the door for them.
Yes, and they don't fit that bill. They don't fit that description. And I had a conversation with President Trump on the phone, and he said, what's happening down there? And I said, President, what you've been told by those people who are opposed to transformation back home in South Africa is not true. And I added to him, I said, we were well taught by Nelson Mandela and other iconic leaders like Oliver Tambo on how to continue to build a united nation out of the diverse groupings that we have in South Africa. We're the only country on the continent where the colonizers came to stay, and we have never driven them out of our country. So they are staying, and they're making great progress. It's a fringe grouping that does not have a lot of support, that is anti-transformation and anti-change, that would actually prefer to see South Africa going back to apartheid type of policies. And I said to him, I would never do that. I learned at the feet of Nelson Mandela, and we intend to proceed with the implementation of our constitutional architecture. And I thought in my conversation with him early in the morning at 4 o'clock South African time, he understood that. And I said, I'd like to come and meet him so that we can discuss this matter further. So those people who have fled are not being persecuted. They are not being, hounded. They are not being treated badly. And they are leaving ostensibly because they don't want to embrace the changes that are taking place in our country in accordance with our Constitution. So,
and now, U.S.-South Africa relations tense, especially since Trump also hit the brakes on working with South Africa for the G20 summit. For even churches are dipping out. Yo, what you want to do when the Episcopal Church, which has been doing refugee work for decades, steps back and says, nah, what you were not co-signing this? That's big. They said this selective welcome goes against everything they stand for. So what's really at play here? A lot of folks see this as a move to play to Trump's base, a base that loves the great replacement talk and eats up that idea of saving white people from a black-run country.
White South Africans are now given refugee status in the US, and as somebody who comes from a country that has been hosting white South Africans for the past decade now as they're seeking refuge, I just want to tell you, and you can ask Australians and Kiwis about this too, because white South Africans have been moving in massive numbers to Australia and New Zealand, so they know what I'm talking about. When white South Africans move to white majority countries, which the US is, they start thinking that because it's a white majority country, that it's a safe space to say inflammatory things about black South Africans. So just an FYI, get ready for that.
But let me ask you this, what you want to do? If we're only helping people who look like us, is it really about safety or just supremacy in a suit?
Here's Joe from Georgia. So Donald Trump earlier this year stopped letting refugees come into the United States. However, undoubtedly he's making an exception. He's making an exception for white residents of South Africa to come in refugee status here in the United States. They've even got their first plane load coming, which the United States government has arranged for them. Now, I do believe that most of us, when they say the word immigrants or refugees or whatever, they think of everybody. But now, it's been reduced to an exception for white people only. So, once again, if we don't believe that this immigration war specifically is against black and brown people,
keep your eyes open and your hearts open wider. Don't get caught in the sauce. Read between the lines.
Specifically is against black and brown people? You're not paying attention.
Hurry up and get it off your fucking chest.
This has been the Uncle Scruffy podcast. If you feel a way about it, hit me up. Let's talk. If you mad, even better. That means you're paying attention. Until next time, peace, love, and no lies.